Ooh. I'm 99% positive I just saw a fish. Dude, I saw him come flying out from underneath the dock. That was awesome. That was so awesome. I called that. How's it going, everyone? It's Snoo from 603 Bass, and we're going to rewind the season a little bit here, get back to some of this crazy amount of backlook footage I have, and start getting back to these tournament recaps. Now, for those that remember, the first tournament recap I did was of the first tournament I had this year, which was on Newfound Lake, that me and my buddy won/took second place because it was a double down tournament. This was the weekend immediately following that. This tournament was on Highland Lake, which is in Stoddard and Washington, New Hampshire. It is a man-made reservoir to an extent. It's a small pond that they put a dam on and they flooded it. It's very shallow. Average depth is 7 feet. Max depth is 30 feet, but don't let that max depth fool you. You really want to focus on that average depth if you ever go fishing up here. This place is stupid shallow. When they say average depth is 7 feet, and that max depth of 30, there's a very, very small area of this entire reservoir that does get down to 30 feet, and that kind of skews the average depth. The average depth where you actually do the majority of your fishing is more like 4 to 5 feet. So even at normal pool, this place is shallow and loaded with all sorts of structure as far as rocks and stumps go, and can be very dangerous. Now, it is a highly populated area and a relatively highly pressured area as well. This place does hold pretty good-sized tournaments as well. Now, for our tournament itself, there was only 3 boats. There was supposed to be more. It's for a small club thing. Not many people showed up. This was the first week of the summer season where it got hot, and we were into the very early stages of post-spawn fishing. So this was going to definitely be a tough day with bluebird skies, and the wind that we got was few and far between, so it made for a very tough day. Now, all that said, this is actually going to be a pretty short recap because this was one of the very few times where we went in with a very clearly defined game plan for what we wanted to do and hoped the fish would be doing and executed it to the T. It went exactly as we wanted. Now, this place does have smallmouth and largemouth, but we are specifically targeting post-spawn largemouth. With this place being so shallow, the weather being so hot, and the water being really dirty, the clarity here is not very good. It's maybe a maximum of 2 feet. We wanted to focus on the largemouth bite because we knew it was going to be easier. So here we are, tournament day. As I said, weather's hot. It got well into the 90s this day. The very, very light bit of wind that we did have didn't stick around for much. Bluebird skies, and the water temps were in the low 70s already at this point. And to top it all off, the water got to that point very, very quickly. The water temps around these lakes exploded in a very short period of time once we hit the beginning of June. So not only these fish are post-spawn, but the water temperature is climbing very rapidly. And I found that tends to throw these fish into a bit of a funk, especially when they're already kind of stressed out from the spawn. So we weren't sure what kind of day we were going to get into as far as what it was going to be for quality and quantity. So, game plan. We knew that it was going to be ugly, given all those weather circumstances that we were going to be dealing with. So our plan was, knowing that there is a ton of structure here as far as overhead structure is concerned. Docks and boats everywhere. This place is loaded with boats and docks and houses. It's kind of ridiculous for how small of a place this is and how remote it is. But that was the main focus. We're going to go in and throw everything. I was going to try some moving baits early, anywhere in the shade that we could find it. Previous tournaments here, about this same time of the year, a lot of guys that did really well were fishing moving baits in the shade early. So that's what we started with, just to be on the safe side. And while I did catch 1 or 2 fish doing it, it wasn't really panning out. So pretty early on, we abandoned that and just went straight to what our main game plan was. Let's just focus on boats and docks. We're going to throw a bunch of soft plastics and get up under there as tight as we can and pick these things apart. Not just throw in once or twice at each dock and each boat, but really thoroughly fish it. Now, doing so was a 1-2 punch. While both my partner, Andrew, and myself were throwing soft plastics, the idea was that we were both going to try and throw slightly different presentations. He was primarily working like a baby brush hog, and I was working some sort of flapping hog, things of that nature, like a biffle bug, things kind of like that, but I was throwing a bunch of different things and working different colors. I started with my go-tos, which is like a watermelon green with a black and red flake, and then I had a slightly different tinged watermelon green with just a black flake. I tried a black and blue. I tried an Okeechobee craw, which is like a half and half of a blue and a green with a black flake. so on and so forth. Now, my buddy Andrew was working on more of like a brown color, and that ended up being like the go-to for the rest of the day. He stumbled upon a bait that the fish just could not get enough of, and that was a green pumpkin baby brush hog, which I think is the 4-inch model, but like that muddyish brown kind of green color. Anything that was close to that, the fish were in love with. And it had to be black flake, because I had something of that same color that had a black and red, and I wasn't getting bit nearly as often as he was. And I switched over to something almost identical to what he had, just a black flake, and they just started crushing it. To quickly go over the setup that I was using that did the majority of the heavy lifting for me today, I was using a 7-foot 6-inch heavy action Quantum PT Accurus rod with an Abu Garcia Aura SX 6.3-to-1 bait caster, 20-pound Seaguar Red Label fluorocarbon, and then as far as weights, just some generic steel weights because you're not allowed to use lead in New Hampshire, and I'm too cheap to buy tungsten at the moment, and then a 4/0 Gamakatsu extra wide gap hook because Gamakatsu is the best hooks on the market. That's what I firmly believe. I'm not sponsored by them, I just love them. I've never had a single problem with those hooks, and I will continue to buy them and support them because I love them. Now, while that is pretty much the gist of what we did for the day, it wasn't quite that simple. It wasn't just every dock and every boat that we were finding fish on. It was any dock and boat that we could find that at the end of it, it was like 2 to 3 feet deep, and that was it. Anything deeper or shallower, we couldn't find them. It had to be no less than 2 feet, no more than 3 feet. And it was a wild thing, but that was the common denominator between all of these spots. We didn't really stumble upon it right away. We just knew that we were catching them off of docks and boats. And then at one point you can see we're fishing a dock. It's got 2 docks and 2 boats on it. And there's a lot like that here. And we're like, okay, well, why are we getting bit over there and not over here? And then it kind of clicked as we caught a fish, really paying attention. Okay, move in. What are we looking at here? Oh, okay, it's like 2.5 feet deep in this boat dock. Not a problem. Move on to the next one. Nothing. Oh, okay, it's 4 feet off the end of this, and so on. It was that tiny nuance that really kind of keyed us in on where exactly these fish were. No, it's not to say we didn't try other things. We did move out, and we tried other areas that we thought might produce different or better results, because we were catching fish, but we weren't really catching any giants, and I felt kind of nervous, because some of these guys we were fishing with are very, very good, that they're going to stumble onto the same pattern, but kind of figure out something that was just slightly different inside that same depth area that was going to unlock the bigger fish. And that's what we tried, but it did not produce anything. It had to be like hard structure with really good solid shade. Again, in the form of a dock or a boat. Now, seriously, like, that's it. End of recap. The day was great, and there's really nothing else I can go into detail on that. You live for days like that as a tournament fisherman. When you go out and you think back on everything you've done, knowing, okay, this time of the year they should be doing this, and they should want that, and they should be in this area, and this should work. And it's rare that you can go out there and execute exactly what you had in mind without having to adjust for anything at all after you've gotten on the water. And that's exactly how this day went. Now, it didn't produce any crazy glamorous results other than it produced a win, and that's what matters. So myself and my buddy, I forget exactly how many fish we caught throughout the day. By the end of the day, I only had 1 fish out of our 4 fish limit in there that was mine, and my buddy Andrew did the rest of the heavy lifting there for the rest of the day. Like I said, he just had that perfect combination between exactly what color they wanted, the line and weight setup, and the pace that he was fishing it, as far as just how slowly he was lifting it, letting it fall back to the bottom, and that pause in between lifts. He had it down to a T. I couldn't quite replicate it, and honestly I didn't want to, because again, it's good to slightly differentiate what you're doing to be more thorough in covering exactly what it is you're trying to do, so you can try and entice different bites. But at any rate, we had 4 fish limit of all largemouth for 11.53 pounds, and we were actually the only team to bring in a 4 fish limit. One other team brought in 3, and the other team only brought in 1 fish. So it was a pretty brutal day for all others involved. And we also took the lunker at 3.16 pounds, which is not a giant by any means, but definitely a solid fish. But that's going to wrap this up. I hope you guys enjoyed this very short and very much to the point recap of this tournament win that I had back in June. There's going to be kind of a mixed bag of videos moving forward from this point. I have a lot of backlog footage that I want to get to, and then I have some current stuff that I'll eventually get to as well. So I'm going to try and bounce back and forth between current and older stuff from June and then July and so on and so forth until I work through everything. And at some point in the very, very near future, I'm going to be working in some ice fishing footage as well. And if I'm really lucky, shouldn't be a problem though, I'll be getting down to the Cape in Massachusetts around Cape Cod. There's a half dozen ponds down there that do not ice in over the winter. They are completely free open water that you can fish year round, and they do have boat launches. I will not be able to bring my own boat because it will be tied up and put to bed for the winter, but I will figure out something. I'm desperate to get down there so I can keep fishing open water. I'm going to make that happen. Thank you all for watching. Greatly appreciate it. If you could go ahead and subscribe, I would really sincerely appreciate that more than anything. Thank you guys. I'll catch you in the next video.